Namaste. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are globally. My name is Dr. Suhas Kshirsagar, and on behalf of Ayurvedic Healing and Indica, I welcome all of you to this wonderful expression of Vedic wisdom. I've been practicing Ayurveda, especially in the West, for almost 35 years now. And the topic that I'm going to discuss today with all of you is something which is pretty close to my heart, and it's the essence of our clinical practice over the decades now. The topic is about Chrono Nutrition. I recently wrote and published a book called as Change Your Schedule, Change Your Life. Where we live and practice in the Bay Area in California, we are surrounded with people who are very busy, very creative, very productive, but they are spending so much of time and disobeying the signals of the body. The basic signals from an Ayurvedic perspective that we often talk about as Trayopastambha, as the three pillars of health, which are related with diet, sleep, and exercise. And they're literally violating all of those three things on a daily basis. And not only here in America, but globally, even in India, that we see that it's becoming a huge, huge challenge. Before we get started, I really want to thank Indica, Sophia French, and the Center for Ayurvedic Studies. I really commend all the activities that they have undertaken. I have watched several speakers and the webinars that they have presented. Excellent quality of information, very authentic, right coming from the source. And it's a perfect blend of understanding our tradition in the current situation, which is validated by science. And that's exactly what my mission is. I'm an Ayurvedic physician. My wife, Dr. Manisha, she has been a part of Indica and Center for Ayurvedic Studies, and my son, who will be presenting in next couple of days. We are all Ayurvedic doctors, and we carry this rich tradition and lineage to talk about health and wellness in the current situation. So before further ado, I would like to get started with our topic today, which is Chrono Nutrition. And I'm going to share some of my slides that I have here, which will help us understand and decode some of the concepts that we are going to discuss here. I think one of the foremost and the most important concept that we often talk about is time. And even though it's a man-made construct where we have, in a way, invented time, the division of the time, months, days, tithis, varas, horas, whatever we divide it into, it is a man-made constant. There's no such thing as time. Time is eternal. If you go 100 miles up in space, there's no day and night. We are literally blessed and cursed on planet Earth, where our little planet is swirling on its axis and tumbling at dizzying speed around sun, in which the day and night are created, in which the seasons are created, and our physiologies are just mere reflection of how Mother Nature is responding in our bodies itself. So to understand this concept, and I think coming from a Vedic tradition, I'm so excited to talk about it because I think India and the Vedic tradition was the first one to really identify this time-bound awareness. And having this illusion, Maya, of time-bound awareness and reaching to a state of timelessness where you are connecting yourself with the eternity of the time from your elevated, heightened state of awareness and consciousness. In other words, we can take yourself from Kala to Mahakala, and that is the journey. That is the journey that we all talk about, and that's the highlight, where we understand if our physiology at a genetic level, at a cellular level, is completely time-bound, then the only thing that the Ayurvedic medicine has been talking about for ages together is respect the laws of nature and follow those rhythms. And the most important rhythm that we should all be aware of is sunlight, sunrise. So when we talk about solar nutrition, and when I wrote this book and when we started talking about this as a new concept, it is one of the ancient and the age-old concept of start your day when the sun rises and unwind and stop your day in a way when the sun sets. So it's a golden rule to eat only between sunrise to sunset. That's rule number one. So when we talk about chrono nutrition, it's about understanding the timing of the meals. It's not what you eat. It is important what you eat, but when you eat is even more important. Change Your Life, Change Your Schedule, Change Your Life was translated in 19 different languages around the world. And it's totally based on the ancient Ayurvedic concept of dinacharya and ritucharya itself. What we are learning here is understanding the current epidemic that we have in the world globally about obesity, metabolic syndrome, insomnia, insulin resistance, diabetes, depression. Everything can be linked to the disruption of the circadian rhythm. Ayurveda is the only science that has talked about the gut-brain connection from the perspective of ama, and that ama which creates gut dysbiosis at a systemic level, at a cellular level, affecting your nervous system, your immunity, your immune responses, everything is very, very fresh now. Is something, it's not an age-old, ancient, outdated concept that nobody understands, but this is cutting-edge science. And understanding the circadian disruption, what it leads to your gene expression. And I think that's what Ayurvedic medicine has been. It is a science that I like to call it as the original lifestyle medicine, is the original personalized medicine. And understanding how simple changes, very simple changes can lead to a profound shift in your daily schedule, helping you to control your weight, improve your stamina, cognition, mood, and general health, everything together. So when I started studying this in the light of dinacharya and ritucharya and the Ayurvedic understanding of the division of time, I think from a Vedic perspective, we have a whole science of Jyotish, which is totally related with time-bound awareness, dividing the lunar calendar, because even more than sun, moon gives us even more clear symptoms. We talk about circadian rhythm, which is circling of the earth around the sun. We talk about lunar rhythm, which is the movement of moon around earth. We talk about gravitational rhythms. We talk about celestial rhythm of the planets moving in different orbits. And what's happening? Like today, we are talking about, it's an Amavasya. It's an Amavasya where moon is in the constellation of Ashlesha Nakshatra, where it has its own understanding how it is going to affect the masses because of the celestial event that is happening of Amavasya. And I think this concept of understanding time from a lunar perspective is even more profound and deeper than what we like to divide the time into a Gregorian calendar, which is only solar calendar. So circadian medicine is a perfect template to really understand and synchronize your circadian rhythm of light and darkness right down to the cellular level. And your bodies are literally like time machines, and time is literally embedded in your genes. And a few years ago, there was a discovery of clock genes where 3 American physiologists received a Nobel Prize. And it not only highlights the importance of biological timing, but validates this ancient Ayurvedic principles of daily and seasonal routine. So you can't escape. That's the punchline. You can't escape. You are stuck with how your body is behaving and how your physiology is responding to the time. What is happening outside your window is affecting every cellular rhythm. because biology means your physiology or cells and tissues. Chrono means time, how time affects your physiological functioning, and that is completely hardwired. It's fairly inflexible. And yet our social, economical systems are putting a lot of constant provocation to disrupt eating late, sleeping late, showing up for parties, working late, all of those things, text, emails, everything is making our time busy and putting everything into a faster lane. And I think that faster lane is what the understanding is. Because when we look at Ayurveda, there are some very few basic tenets of Ayurveda. Your body is a process. It's not a frozen structure. It's constantly moving and shifting and changing. And about a few years ago in modern medicine, we used to talk about genetics and genome and mapping the genome and what we do and whether we cut out certain genetic sequencing. That was the discussion. But now we suddenly realize it's not the genes. It's the epigenes. It's the epigenome, which is the problem. And I think Ayurveda is the true science of epigenetics, because your environment is affecting your cell behavior. So body is a process, not a structure. Your body inherently is an energy information field, because how many science that we know that understand your body as Sthula Sharir, Sukshma Sharir, Karan Sharir, which is connected with the energetic field of nadis, koshas, and chakras. So when you look at the physical structure of the body, your genes can be deterministic. Few of them are deterministic, but most of them, you can turn them on, turn them off. You can lengthen your telomeres, you can change your brain structures, you'll develop neuroplasticity. All of those things are latest sciences that tell that it's very fluid and every disease can be reversed by positive changes. You can change your relationship with time, and I think that's what we're discussing here. Chrono Nutrition, you have to change your relationship with time. And the most important component for that is awareness. Only through awareness, by knowing yourself, you are able to shift and change those things. As I said, that where I practice and live, people's schedules is literally killing them. And it's the same in India. Every time I travel and interact with my friends and family in India, everyone has busy work schedules. Emails, texts, WhatsApp, voice messages, Skype, Instagram, social media, Facebook, Twitter. Even now, what we're doing it as 7 o'clock in the evening, 8 o'clock in the evening, we are on the social media. It helps to a certain extent, but there are so many things that we do which are not even helpful. Time poverty is becoming a huge problem. People are becoming cash rich and time poor. And the corporate world, you go and talk to people, it's a perennial time scarcity. Nobody has time for anything. Forget about doing something for yourself. You always become stingy to save your time to make more money. Because time in relation to money is what everybody's talking about. How many hours you work, how much you get paid. Busyness is people confused with a new state of happiness. The more busy you are, you think you're happy, but that's not completely true. And especially young people that I see, if time is money, millennials are literally broke. People think being busy means more valued, more needed. Nobody wants to sit down. It's drive-through food, drive-through coffee, fast-through inventions, all the meal delivery system where you don't have to even think. You can have anything at your fingertip, the food delivered to you. And this is becoming a challenge because it is affecting not only your body, but it is affecting your mind. The feeling of hopelessness, depression, desperation, anxiety. If you are less busy, you feel lonely and unproductive and depressed. And if you are more busy, then you feel overworked, stressed, and unhappy. In both situations, you are unhappy. So how many people you know that they are busy, but they are feeling tired, fatigued, they have lots of food intolerances. It's not food allergies, but Wheat makes them bloated. They can't tolerate dairy. They can't eat this. Beans creates a problem. Feeling dull, heavy, toxic, weight gain, feeling puffy, bloated, lack of focus, concentration, poor sexual desire, restless sleep, and restless emotion. Everybody is becoming very intolerant and snappy. And when we feel the pulse of a nation, of a country, a lot of behavior of people, of cultures, masses, is related with the food, what they're eating. If the food is making them very tamasic and rajasic, what they do is exactly what we see in the headlines of the news. What you eat is you become. And if you change the food, if you change the spectrum of what they're eating, I think you will have different headlines. And this is a task that is undertaken by United Nations. And I'm working as a consultant in helping and guiding some of those things where we are identifying where people are eating green, organic, plant-based diet, what happens to the mentality and how people respond, how it affects their productivity. And there are lots of experiments that are done in current workplaces where they change the kind of quality of the food that is being served and what it does to the productivity of the company itself. Means people are walking around with so-called functional diagnosis of adrenal exhaustion, cortisol dysregulation, inflammation, metabolic dysfunction, insulin resistance, leptin resistance, gene mutations, toxic. These are not diseases, but these are all precursors to the diseases. You choose it, you can have it. And I think going back to Chrono Nutrition and understanding circadian rhythm, this is a simple rule from sunrise to sunset. We understand that when you wake up, the bodily functions are responding at that time. So you wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, you have a sharp rise in your blood pressure. Around 7:30 in the morning, your melatonin stops secreting. So you should be awake, you should be ready. 10 o'clock, your concentration, focus, awareness is at peak. 12, midday, when the sun is at its peak, your body is open, your digestion, your agni, your liver, your metabolic pathways are completely open to receive food, digest, assimilate, and provide nutrition to all the cells and tissues. By 2:30, you're ready to continue to work. By 3:30, 4:30, there's fastest reaction time. 7 o'clock, 17 p.m., which is 5 p.m. in the evening, you should do physical activity, sports, greatest cardiovascular efficiency, muscular strength is good. Again, 6 o'clock in the evening, there's highest rise in blood pressure. And again, these two poles, 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., if you look at these two poles, they have the highest spiking of cortisol dysregulation, the timing of depression, the timing of blood pressure peaking. 6 o'clock in the morning, the arthritis symptoms are worst. You wake up in the morning feeling depressed, lonely, tired, demotivated. Number one time of dying that people die most is between 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. every morning. So you wake up with the whole white day awake in front of you, and people feel inflamed, blocked, myocardial infarct, all of that thing happens around that time. In the evening, you start preparing unwind. As the sun goes down, and I think Ayurveda has talked about this as a beautiful analogy, as a lotus, which is blooming in the presence of sunlight. And when the sun goes down, it shuts down. So the physiology literally shuts down after 6 p.m., after the sun goes down. And if you're putting food on in your digestive tract at that time, that's when the food is going to remain undigested, stuck, stagnant for almost overnight before you wake up in the morning. That undigested food affects your sleep, your energy levels in the morning, and all of this confusion that we have around food, when to eat, how to eat, is leading to this situation. So I'm going to provide a very simple template. The Ayurvedic dosha clock, as we talk about, 2 to 6 a.m. is the time of Vata. So ideally, you should be waking up around 6 o'clock in the morning. because you're feeling fresh, you're awakening, rising activity. Ideally, should start the day with meditation. People who start the day with meditation prevent almost all causes of mortality just because of that. Connecting with something. We call it as the time of sattva. So sunrise and sunset, those are the times of sattva where you should engage in some activities of heightened awareness, puja, prayer, meditation, yoga, whatever you can do to be connected with something bigger, better, greater than yourself. 6 to 10 a.m. is the kapha time of the day. The body is waking up after 7, 8, 9 hours of sleep, and everything is slowing from early activity. So exercise is the most important thing. So if you do 20 minutes of brisk cardio exercise before you eat anything in the morning before 9 o'clock, it reduces all causes of mortality by 43%. Think about it. It reduces all causes of mortality by 43% by doing that activity before breakfast in the morning. 10 to 2 is the time of pitta, where your largest meal of the day should be received at that time. Agni is most prominent. 2 to 6 p.m., again, is the vata time in the evening. You should be preparing for unwinding and preparing for meditation around evening. So the whole ritual of Agnihotra, worshipping sun in the morning and worshipping sun in the evening, is totally based upon this concept. And I think your diet and digestion should be really cornered with these two most important cues that Mother Nature gives you, which is sunrise and sunset. 6 to 10 p.m., you should prepare for unwinding and preparing for good night's sleep. Because diet, sleep, and exercise, they all feed off each other. And if you continue to stay awake past 10 o'clock in the night, then you get into a pitta time, which makes it very difficult to fall asleep and stay asleep. And then 10 to 2 p.m., I think it's so many bodily functions that are happening: lipid synthesis, lipid regulation, cholesterol regulation, immunomodulation, bacterial scavenging. All of that activity is happening in the middle of the night, and you should be asleep. When you're not asleep at that time, then the body is probably creating a lot of disruption in those functions itself. So the circadian medicine is 3 pointers that if you want to learn few things about yourself, it is not what you eat, but when you eat. So try to eat any calories between 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. only. 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. is the time that you should be consuming your calories. It is not what, but when you exercise. Start your day with 30 minutes of vigorous exercise before 9 a.m. before you eat anything. It is not how much you sleep, but when you sleep is important. So lights off from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. So you should be technically asleep between those times. And these pillars that I'm talking about, diet, sleep, and exercise, are so important. No exposure to any form of blue light 1 hour before you go to sleep, and cultivate a state of mindfulness in which how you're going to do all the activities throughout the day itself. Okay? So the topic that we have been talking about is Chrono Nutrition, and timing influences human physiology. Circadian cycles are the property of the body's internal clock, and any disruption to these biological rhythms will result in very adverse health outcomes. So we are constantly evolving in dynamic understanding of the body, try to confirm the association between the circadian rhythms and the health implications. And we know this very clearly to the neurodegenerative risk to metabolic dysfunction, what it is leading to. And understanding chrono nutrition is the focus study of the relationship between food, metabolic function, meal timings, and your circadian system itself. So what we are talking about here is, as we look at this concept of chrono nutrition, all our cells and tissues of the body show molecular clock activity. It's as if they are programmed. As soon as the light falls onto your retina in your eyes almost send a signal to the entire body to wake up. It's a little area in your brain embedded in hypothalamus. It's called a suprachiasmatic nucleus. It is very, very tiny, almost the size of the grain of a rice, which almost sends signals to everywhere. But not only that clock, but there are cellular clock genes that contribute to tissue and system function, that the body is aware that it is the daytime. In the metabolic processes, circadian related component, they start modulating and activating the expression of your hormones, your enzymes, and all the signaling pathways that help you digest food, generate energy, and keep you awake throughout the day, doing your task with optimum level of efficiency and energy. Aligning meal timing with body's circadian cycle for optimal glucose and insulin response, because those are the productive powerhouses for generating energy. Even the hormones like cortisol that we talk about, even the hormones that we talk about, cortisol or leptin, that are affected by circadian oscillation. And it's one of the most important things for improving your metabolic health itself. So in other words, what you eat, when you eat, is giving specific signals to the body. In 2023, a meta-analysis of some participants compared higher energy consumption earlier in the day with higher consumption later in the day on their weight and metabolic parameters. And very simple and straightforward. Those people who consumed food earlier in the day were much more energetic, more efficient, were able to burn those calories and not gain weight and not have insulin fluctuations compared to those people who ate later in the day. So researchers reported significantly greater weight loss in groups with higher energy intakes earlier in the day compared with the groups with higher energy later in the day itself. And not only this, significant reductions in bad cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, fasting glucose levels, insulin resistance, and all of those things where cognitively and physiologically were much more energetic and alive at that time. So what we are talking here is a very age-old Ayurvedic concept of chrono nutrition. According to your age, cycles of day and night, your ethnicity, with your genetics, what your body is used to, how you train, what habits you cultivate, what kind of work you do, how you adjust during social jet lags over the weekend with the travel, everything. What you eat between meal timings and food nutrients and component are all the factors that are affecting your circadian rhythm itself. And especially at a metabolic health outcome level, your good glucose control and healthy body mass index is the simple marker that it will tell you whether you are synchronizing your body. And when you are into a state of desynchronization, then you are slowly creating dysfunction where you have fluctuating blood sugar levels, you have poor glucose tolerance, and it's leading to a slow and steady gain of weight, feeling puffy, gassy, bloated, dull, heavy, toxic, and tired. One of the things that I wrote in my book, which I published earlier, called as the hot belly diet was, and the research that I did was eat late to gain some weight and sleep late to gain some weight. And at that time, about 70% of the country was doing the same. They were all eating late and sleeping late, especially where we live in the United States. The biggest meal of the day that people consume is their dinner, is their evening meal. And when you eat late, sleep late, as I said, that the food just stays into your system, it shuts down, and you wake up dull, heavy, groggy, congested, and tired because the food is not digested. You're feeling puffy and congested. And then you need that caffeine or tea or chai to wake you up and get going. And then people tell you that breakfast is the most important meal of the day, and you put a truckload food on top of all the undigested food that is in your system, and that fresh milk and the stale milk mix together and creates almost a metabolic toxin together. So undigested food with the fresh food that you're eating creates the same situation. And then you walk around feeling completely stuck, metabolically disturbed for a long time. So I think we are into this vicious cycle of not eating properly. So both what is happening with the new concept that we talk about in medicine is TRF. TRF means time restricted feeding. And when we talk about time restricted feeding, TRF and circadian realignment, both glucose tolerance, insulin sensitivity is to be shown lower in the evening, which why they contribute increased risk of metabolic dysfunction for those people who habitually eat meals during the evening hours. So I think one habit that you should correct from today is number one, try to eat as early as possible in the evening by 5:30 or 6, close to sunset. Every half an hour you are eating after sunset, the quantity of the food should be reduced by 25%. So for example, if the sun sets at 6 o'clock and you're eating at 6:30, then you are eating only 75% of your dinner. If you're eating at 7 o'clock, then you're eating only 50%. If you're eating at 8 o'clock, then you should be eating only 25% of the food for that evening. So if you follow that rule, then you will understand that you will have enough time. Because what Ayurveda says that your meal should be digested before you go to sleep. So for example, if you eat your food at 6:30, by 9:30, in 3 to 4 hours, the first hour is of kapha, the second is pitta, the third is vata. And in 3 hours, the food is more or less digested from a macro digestion level. And then it won't affect your sleep and it won't affect your wake-up time. So not only it is about insulin responses and blood sugar fluctuation, but it's how you feel mentally and physically. Because at the end of the day, if you feel mentally alive and agile and energetic physically is what is going to guarantee more success. One of the taglines that I use in my earlier book, The Hot Belly Diet, was rekindle your fire, rekindle your life. So bringing that fire back, energizing your digestion is going to improve what kind of destiny you attract for you to lead a healthy or happy life. So the meta-analysis that I wanted to share with all of you, that those people who ate between 7 a.m. and 4 p.m. led to a very healthy, stable blood sugar regulation. Results indicated that after an identical meal, the postprandial glucose insulin response was significantly lower than compared to the night. And those people who consumed more carbohydrates in the night also led to postprandial glycemic values being very high. So I think you want to consciously reduce those intake in the night itself. So what is happening is with the cycles of light and darkness, the body is awake and the body shuts down. These clocks are telling you with the signals of ghrelin, cortisol, insulin, leptin, glucose regulation, everything is the feeding time. The brain clocks which are regulated not only in the brain itself, but even at a cellular level. They are the ones which are responsible for the homeostatic energy balance, because one is the central clock that is in the brain and the others are the peripheral clocks which are at a cellular level. So now you want to regulate them. And the challenge is how you motivate, how you reward your body in the social context, in your decision making, in your food intake. You often go to marriages, weddings, different functions, social events, late in the night parties. All of those things is all surrounding food and drinks and variety of different things that you do. So I think that is what is creating a real problem. And you have to really change those habits without stopping you to socialize and show up for those events, but not indulging into those foods. Because Ayurveda talks about you should be eating foods according to your prakriti. That's very important, because knowing your prakriti and eating the food, these are the 8 rules of dietetics as we talk about, Ashtau, Ahar, Vithi, Ayatan, as we said. So prakriti is your body type. Karana, because look at that also. And that has also changed a lot. Karana means what you use to prepare food. And the basic thing that you need to prepare food is water and fire. As simple as that. Simple water and fire are the most important things to process the food. But now the processes have become so complex. Most of the meals that are ready to eat, prepared, added food, preservatives, colors, insecticides, pesticides, radiation of the food is making this current completely impure, and it's slowing down your metabolic function. Some yoga combination, what you're combining just for the taste is creating a real problem. Rashi is the quantity. It's what you eat, how much you eat, what time you eat, when you eat, all of that is creating this disruption. And the most important is where you live and what kind of food you're eating. So just to give you an example where I practice in the United States, so there are lots of vegetarians who live here, and instead of eating a plant-based diet, it's a grain-based diet. These are the vegetarians who do not eat any vegetables. They eat tons of rice, chapatis, naans, parathas, and very little sabji. And if it's a grain-based diet, it's a prescription for metabolic dysfunction. And in the name of protein, what they're eating is only cheese, which is creating more clogging of the channels itself. So you have to be really aware of your surroundings, where you live and how you eat. Kala, because I don't think any other science than Ayurveda has talked about the Kala Bhojan and Akala Bhojan with that clarity. Very simple, very clear. What you do before you eat, what you do when you are eating, what should you be doing after you eat. All of those things is a beautiful description. And I think it's even more detailed than the modern science of Chrono Nutrition. Because it's related to not only the 6 tastes of the food, but we talk about the texture, the appearance, the taste, the smell, the preparations of the food, the quality, the quantity, the timing, how you eat, what are the sankalpas that you do before, feeding the food, offering the meal, prasadam, naivedyams, feeding elderlies, guests. All of that is such a beautiful concept. It's all Upayog Samstha. Upayog Samstha is all the rituals, the sadhana of the food that you do is all related with that. Because with Prakriti, with Karana, preparation and processing, combinations, quantity, place, timing, and all the rituals of the food sadhana that you do, the surrounding, the environment, social, cultural, even food plating, how you should be putting the food, how it should be looking colorful, how you eat the food, nati drutam, nati vilambanam, not too fast, chewing your food properly, eating not too without having any distractions. And all of those things are a really important concept, which affects the Upayokta. Upayokta is the one who is consuming food, because that whole process is going to affect not only your taste buds and whether you're going to like the food or dislike the food, but how you're going to respond to the eating of that food and the ritual of that food itself. So one of the concepts that Ayurveda has talked about is fasting and Upavaas. And I think Chrono Nutrition, one of the things that I tell all my patients is do not eat anything in between your breakfast to lunch and lunch to dinner. That's simple rule. So you wake up in the morning, you do a little cardiovascular exercise for 15-20 minutes, and your first meal should be around 9 o'clock. And the breakfast is in the kapha time of the day, so it should be light. So from breakfast to lunch, try not to eat anything. And then have the most powerful, decent meal that you have is during the lunch, and try not to eat anything from lunch to dinner. And try to have early dinner, try to have a lighter dinner, and from this dinner all the way till next day morning breakfast, you should be fasting. Because genetic switches are turned on during fasting to help you stop inflammation. And it's a science. And I think Ayurveda is the only science, along with yoga, has talked about the values of Upavasa. Upavasa, Upa means close, Vasa means the abode or the self. You're more close to yourself, the greater self. your divinity, your godliness during the fasting. And in the name of gods and goddesses and navaratris that we have culturally trained ourselves to create this understanding or awareness of fasting. Nowadays, it has become more impure. Forget about that. But I think fasting helps you fight fatty liver disease. So the clock that I depicted here, if your first meal is at 12 noon and your last meal is at 5 o'clock, and you do it just these 2 meals in a day, a good decent meal that whatever you want to eat it at 12 noon. Try not to eat anything before that in the morning. And then the last meal, you should have it at 5 o'clock or maximum 6 o'clock. So if only these 2 meals are doing, then you will notice that this periodic fasting is good for your health, your heart. Fasting triggers stem cell regeneration. Even all the old damaged immune system is reprogrammed and rejuvenated. The researcher says the fasting flips a regenerative switch, which prompts stem cells to create brand new white blood cells, especially regulating your immune system. Intermittent fasting will also help you with diabetes and cardiovascular diseases. Diet that mimics fasting appear to slow down aging process and boost immunity. We also talk about alternate day fasting can boost protein known as BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor, by about 50 to 400%. So I think fasting as a general rule can be a part of daily routine. I don't care whether you name it in the name of any religion or any cultural belief system, but staying away from food. And that's what all the ancient cultures have done. Is that right? Is abstinence of food and sex is one that brings you close to godliness and divinity, and it's a part of ritual. But in the name of medicine now, we have to do that in 14 hours of fasting every night. So this is almost a prescription that you figure out a way that from 6 p.m., maximum 7 p.m. in the evening till next day 9 o'clock, you're not eating anything. So make it a habit of doing a 14-hour fast every night. It's a reset. It gets rid of all the unwanted ama and undigested metabolic impurities from your system itself. Eat your food ideally from 9 to 10 a.m. in the morning as the first meal, and try to finish it by 5 o'clock at least twice a week. At least twice a week. Eat only 2 meals between 10 and 5 only. Start your day with 30 minutes of vigorous exercise before 9 a.m. And as I said, we should be putting billboards about it. All causes of death and mortality can be reduced by a brisk cardiovascular exercise, whether you go for a morning walk, you do your round of 12 sun salutations, whatever you're doing. And try to be asleep between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. Asleep, deep asleep. And avoiding blue light, which creates sleep disruption, delayed secretion of melatonin, which doesn't allow you to fall asleep and stay asleep itself. So I think I am going to stop here and probably tell you that there's more and more research coming out that is validating this Ayurvedic concept of chrono nutrition, of dieting, fasting, eating the right foods at the right time. Sleep is one of the most powerful anti-inflammatory activity one would do, is a miracle drug. My next book is about sleep and the impact on the physiology and everything what it takes. Because as I said, that if you are exercising, if your body is pleasantly tired, then it's more likely you are going to fall asleep and stay asleep. And if you get a good night's sleep, then you wake up early in the morning to do all the activities and your digestion is really, really good. So these 3 pillars that we talk about, they all are interdependent. If you don't sleep well, then your eating and digestion becomes very sluggish, and then you don't have any energy to exercise. So I think sleep is a miracle drug. It reduces inflammation, and understanding that staying away from heavy evening meals is a lifestyle choice that everybody should be following probably. And awareness is the key. Be mindful with what you eat. Your full-time job no matter what your day job is, to take care of yourself. And that awareness, that state of enlightened living, as we talk about, and that's what Ayurveda is. Ayurveda is the science of enlightened living, and health is a mere byproduct of enlightenment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Suhas, for this extremely timely and much needed talk. Apologies that to the audience, we were not able to introduce Doctor at the beginning of the talk, but I'll just quickly give you a very brief introduction to him. Of course, you've heard him and his very wise words of Ayurveda. So Dr. Suhas Kshirsagar is a world-renowned Ayurveda physician and educator, and he holds a MD in Ayurvedic medicine, and he's an accomplished Ayurvedic physician and has traveled worldwide spreading the message of Ayurveda. And from this talk and his books, we can learn more about how to live more mindfully. Doctor, I think there's just one person who's asking for a link, but personally, if I may ask a question, I'm Aparna Sridhar. I'm part of INDIC. I'm their chief editor. I had the privilege of interacting with you when I was with the Center for Soft Power. Welcome to INDIC Academy, and thank you so much, Doctor. One question I would like to ask you, if there are no more questions, we can close, but I would like to ask you, Doctor, is even while being extremely conscious and following the Ritucharya as well as the Dinacharya, why is it that some individuals are having several deficiencies, include most common being vitamin D in India? It runs in families. It runs, with people who consciously go out into the sunshine, who, absorb the rays of the sun. Another deficiency is B12 among vegetarians. So how would Ayurveda, address this kind of deficiency, doctor? Even when we are following the rules of Ayurveda, why do we have these deficiencies?
Well, many times there are some, we call it as Agni Mandyas, where there are certain imbalances related with your assimilative function. You're trying to do everything right, but many people, even though they are following all the rules of diet and behavior, the terminal impact of what we call it as cellular nutrition or dhatu agni, where the food needs to be converted into the tissues itself, there are certain links that are not working properly. So kindling the agni using the right herbs and spices is the key. And then looking at the diet in a general with the right combination, especially with B12 synthesis that we know. It's all about the intrinsic factor, which is related with your small intestine. Okay, so it is something which is related with the seat of Agni itself. So improving that actually has improved B12 synthesis in many people itself. And the right combinations of the food, in which the right quantity of milk and yogurt and honey, which are animal-based products, which have good quality of B12 synthesis and regulation, along with the food, is important. Vitamin D3 is a fat-soluble vitamin in some way, and so it's understanding the right kind of oleation and the combination of the right fats that are assimilable in the body actually improves the D3 synthesis itself. So the right kind of exposure to sunlight is no doubt it is important, but correcting their digestion would actually help them. And the symptoms of B12 deficiency or vitamin D3 deficiency can also be improved by some of these measures that we often do.
Thank you, doctor. I think there are some questions.
Giving a supplementation is the quickest and the easy way, but I don't think that is going to serve the long-term problem why the body is not producing or synthesizing it properly.
Thank you, doctor. Are you able to see the questions on your screen? I think some members of our audience have some questions.
Yes. Again, what are the beverages intake, like milk or timing of the milk? Any food that has any taste that disrupts your blood sugar regulation. So for your question is, for example, you wake up in the morning and you drink a glass of milk and then you have your breakfast at 9 o'clock. That milk is considered to be a meal, and that is going to disrupt your blood sugar regulation. So milk is considered as a meal along with that. So you cannot have anything that is going to destabilize your blood sugar level. So even if it's with milk, and again, it's different in different ages. So if you talk about a growing age of kids, they need food, they need nutrition. I'm talking about elderly people which are suffering because of the lack of digestion and things like that. So I think that is okay with kids with growing age, but especially with adults, any milk intake, any tea intake with sugar, any coffee intake with sugar will count as a snack in itself. So the position on red wines, okay. So as I said, that it's a food that is touted as a health food itself. So whether you take it at lunch, whether you take it at dinner, whether you take it as a beverage along with the food, whatever you're consuming at that time, if you consume in a small quantity, it doesn't have any issue. It doesn't create any problem as such. So it's not that whether it is a tamasic food or something, a small quality of a good, decent red wine would actually help your digestion and assimilation. And we use asavas and arishta in Ayurveda also. So again, it should not be away from the meal time, but at the meal times, it's not a problem as such. Is eating a fruit before consuming the meal the correct sequence? Ideally, yes. Whatever you're going to eat should be a part of that meal itself for those 30 minutes that you're eating, and having a light sweet that stimulates your taste buds is not a bad idea to have that. Again, the hormonal imbalances do not come only from your thinking or your diet, but what happens is the impurities that you're exposed to. There are lots of food that you're eating which are triggering the estrogenic pathways or the pathways of the hormones, like especially foods that contain that are wrapped in plastic, or even drinking water in the plastic bottle. Plastic is like a xenoestrogen, and it mimics like hormones and creates a lot of disruption. So a lot of toxicities in cosmetics, chemicals that you ingest are creating hormonal disruption itself. How a diabetic patient should follow this? I think this is a perfect cycle for a diabetic patient. If they can control their diabetes for eating only 2 meals or 2 decent meals and 1 super small meal, and pray away from food in between, I think it'll really help them regulate and stabilize their blood sugar. I think late dinner is the crux of the issue. And as I said, eat late to gain weight and sleep late to gain weight. If you're doing both, you're literally doomed. There's nothing that we can do. Even if you take medication, even if you take this is really, really problematic. So again, a glass of milk before sleep. In conditional, sometimes we advise them to drink that if people need it, but mostly anything that is going to have any calories or any taste that is going to disrupt your blood sugar level, we usually don't advise people to do that. Water intake has to be regulated. You should be drinking enough water throughout the day. And I think water hydration is the key, making sure. And it can actually divert your attention towards what we call it as false hunger and false craving. So sipping water actually minimizes that, especially as a hot water with a little bit of few drops of lemon or maybe a slice of ginger would help you with this. It does change with the northern and southern hemisphere with the sunrise and the sunset, and you have to adjust that and adapt that to the time zone where you're living. But I think it is very much related with how you are aware of it and how your physiology is responding to it. People have lived for ages together in North Pole and South Pole, but again, understanding that is more important, especially in the life. India is a country where we have 6 seasons. India is a country where we are so close to the tropics itself. So I think understanding those 6 seasons, following those things, that we have these vibrant availability of fresh, natural foods that are available. So a clean plant-based diet with time-restricted feeding, a clean plant-based diet with time-restricted feeding is the solution to the current epidemic of metabolic syndrome, I would say. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed my time with you. And I wish you all the best, and we'll continue to work together, Aparnaji. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor. And maybe our readers, if you could just talk about your names of your books, Doctor. I think the Hot Belly Diet and your upcoming book. Maybe they could get those and go through
Everything
them.
is available on Amazon. Change Your Schedule, Change Your Life, the Hot Belly Diet. I've written a book on the blend of Ayurveda, Yoga, and Jyotish and Vedanta called as The Art and Science of Vedic Counseling, which is also an excellent book. I've written a book on Panchakarma along with my wife. So people should be able to find, if you just Google my name, you should be able to find all my books on Amazon.
Thank you so much, Doctor, and hoping to carry on this conversation again. Thank you.
Thank you. Take
Thank
care.
you to
Bye.
all our viewers. Good.